Tonight we slip into the narrow shoes of a man whose entire job is making sure time doesn't fall asleep. You're a bell ringer in a towering medieval cathedral, and every clang you send rolling across rooftops reminds the town that life is moving forward whether they like it or not. The bells wait for you like hungry monsters in the shadows above, and you've got to feed them your muscle, your patience, and maybe a bit of your sanity. Spoiler, you probably won't survive this gig with a straight spine or all your hearing intact, but hey, let's give it a go anyway. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The morning is quiet but not still. You rouse before the rest of the city, the faint light of dawn blushing against your shuttered window. The air is sharp, damp, a mix of smoke from banked hearths and the faint metallic tang of dew-soaking roof tiles. Somewhere down in the slumbering alleys, a rooster crows like it's auditioning for a solo. You groan, because that sound means you're already late. Your work isn't glamorous. Nobody writes ballads about the bell ringer. People cheer kings and saints, not the fellow dangling from ropes in a dusty loft. Still, without you, the city would stumble. Time was a slippery thing in the Middle Ages. No wristwatches, no smartphones screaming alarms. Bells were the heartbeat of the town, calling bakers to ovens, merchants to stalls, farmers to fields, worshippers to pews. You are the living clock. And if you oversleep, entire markets run late, monks miss prayers, and somebody's probably going to accuse you of consorting with the devil. No pressure. You throw on your coarse linen shirt and woolen hose, tugging boots stiff from yesterday's mud. Your back already twinges, though you haven't even reached the stairs yet. Historians still argue whether medieval diets gave common workers enough strength for their punishing jobs. Bread, peas, cabbage, maybe salted herring if you were lucky, hardly the kind of protein shake modern gym rats swear by. Yet somehow you've got to haul your weary body up stone steps and yank ropes that could drag an ox off its feet. Out in the street, the cathedral looms. Its spires claw at the paling sky, stained glass still dark because the sun hasn't yet set them ablaze. The building itself hums faintly, as though it's holding its breath before the day begins. You stand at the great oak doors, shifting your shoulders, feeling very small compared to the carved saints glaring down at you. And here's your first joke of the day. You work in the grandest landmark in town, and yet your wages barely buy you stale bread. Not exactly the career counselor's dream pick. Inside, the chill is worse. Cathedrals aren't heated, and the flagstones seem to hoard the night's cold just to spite you. Your footsteps echo too loudly in the cavernous nave, bouncing around like mischievous sprites. The smell here is old stone dust, candle wax, and that faint musk of incense clinging from last night's vespers. You half expect some monk to scold you for being noisy, but the place is deserted except for the bones of saints tucked beneath the altar, and they don't seem much in the mood for conversation. You light a stub of tallow candle and begin your approach toward the tower stairs. Each flicker of flame dances across carvings of angels and demons, frozen in eternal battle. You can't help but smirk, those figures are locked in an epic clash forever, while your daily war is with ropes and pulleys. Somehow, yours feels harder. It's at this moment your stomach growls. No breakfast yet. Many bell ringers couldn't afford much more than a crust pocketed from last night's meal. Some cheekier ones even borrowed communion bread when the priests weren't looking, though you'd never admit to such heresy out loud. In fact, one quirky tidbit: in some towns, bell ringers doubled as night watchmen, which meant they sometimes got paid partly in ale. Yes, you were technically keeping time while tipsy. Imagine if your alarm clock drank on the job. The dawn outside deepens. You know your first task is imminent, the matins bells. Monks must rise, whether they like it or not. And so must the townsfolk. In a few moments, sleepy faces will turn toward the sound you unleash, muttering curses or prayers depending on how grumpy they are. You set your candle in a niche, flex your stiff fingers, and take a breath. Soon, the entire city will be awake because of you. The bells are waiting. The climb begins. You face the narrow archway at the base of the tower, where a spiral staircase coils like a stone serpent. The steps are uneven, worn thin by centuries of sandals and boots. You tilt your head back, trying to glimpse the top, but the stairwell vanishes into shadow, as if daring you to enter. You sigh, put one hand on the cold wall for balance, and start your ascent. It takes about 3 steps before you remember why you dread this part. The spiral is so tight you feel like a corkscrew turning through the cathedral's spine. The walls are clammy, breathing damp air into your face. Every so often a slit window opens to the dawn, throwing a blade of light that makes the dust shimmer. And then it's back to darkness, back to the endless grind upward. If medieval gyms had wanted to advertise cardio, this would be their poster child. Climb every day, feel your lungs burn, and enjoy calves of steel. Membership fee? Your sanity. By the 20th step, your breathing grows ragged. By the 50th, you're convinced there must be twice as many stairs as yesterday. Historians still argue whether bell ringers were considered athletic specialists or just desperate workers who drew the short straw. Either way, your thighs are filing complaints with HR, which in this case is probably St. Christopher, patron of travelers, if he even bothers to pick up. You pause to lean against the wall, forehead pressed to cool stone. Somewhere above, pigeons coo like hecklers, reminding you how much easier they've got it wings instead of legs. Speaking of pigeons, quirky tidbit for you. Medieval cathedrals had so many of them roosting in towers that some bell ringers collected droppings to sell as fertilizer. Yes, part-time guano entrepreneur was a side hustle before Etsy existed. Your hand trails along the wall as you resume the climb. The stone is rough, but smooth in patches where countless fingers have traced the same path. You're not just climbing for yourself, you're moving in the grooves of history. Some bell ringer long dead probably cursed the same treads, tripped on the same chipped edge, and muttered the same silent prayer that they wouldn't collapse from exhaustion before reaching the top. The air thins, turns colder. The candle you carry sputters, smoke curling behind you like a ghost reluctant to follow. Each landing you reach teases you with the idea that this is it, the top at last, but no, just another curve, another coil of stone winding upward. Jokingly, you consider whether hell might actually be downward stairs, and heaven upward ones, except heaven seems like it's deliberately dragging its feet. Somewhere around the 100th step, you catch a whiff of old wood. That means you're nearing the first level where the tower's beams begin. The belfry isn't far now. You imagine the bells hanging above, great bronze beasts waiting to roar at your touch. You shiver, not sure if it's from excitement or dread. Your breath rasps. Sweat beads your brow despite the chill. You can hear the faint thrum of the city outside, vendors setting up, carts rattling, dogs barking. They don't see your struggle, this lonely prelude to the sound that will rule their day. To them, the bells simply ring, as if by magic. Only you know the cost. Another landing. Another climb. Your boot slips once on a damp stone, and your stomach lurches. The staircase has no railing, no safety net. One misstep and you'll tumble down like a sack of flour, bones snapping on the way. You grip the wall tighter. Reality check number 2. OSHA doesn't exist, and medieval cathedrals don't hand out helmets. When you finally glimpse the hatch at the top, your chest heaves with relief. A square of pale light filters through, carrying the smell of timber and bird feathers. You push upward, shoulders brushing stone, and emerge into the wooden skeleton of the tower. Beams crisscross like ribs, and between them the sky yawns, painted now with streaks of orange. You've made it. For now. You lean against a beam, heart pounding, and glance at the ropes dangling from above. They sway slightly, whispering promises of labor yet to come. The bells are close, their bronze mouths still silent in the morning hush. And as you stand there, catching your breath, you realize this climb is your daily penance, your stairway not to heaven, but to duty. Tomorrow, and the day after, and every day until your body gives out, you'll drag yourself up again. But for now, you savor the moment, dawn breaking, pigeons scattering, and the hush before the first toll. You stand in the half-light of the tower, surrounded by beams and the faint rustle of wings. The ropes dangle from the ceiling, thick hemp cords worn smooth where countless hands have gripped them. They look almost alive, twitching slightly with the draft that sneaks through the louvered windows. Your palms tingle, already remembering the sting from yesterday's blisters. It's time for the first toll. You square your stance, plant your boots, and wrap your fingers around the rope. The hemp bites into your skin, stiff with old sweat and resin. Above you, suspended like slumbering giants, the bells wait. Each one has a name, usually something pious, Mary, Gabriel, or John. You, however, have less holy nicknames for them: shoulder-breaker, ear-splitter, and the widowmaker. The first pull is the hardest. You lean back, putting all your weight into the rope. It resists, heavy with centuries of bronze and gravity. Then, with a deep metallic groan, the bell stirs. The sound rolls through the wooden beams, into your chest, and down your bones. Another heave, and the bell swings further. And then it happens, the full strike. The note bursts out, rich and thunderous, pouring through the tower slats and tumbling into the waking city. You feel it more than hear it. Your teeth buzz. Dust drifts from the rafters. Pigeons scatter like panicked thoughts. Somewhere below, a baker curses because his dough isn't ready, while a monk thanks God for the reminder to shuffle toward morning prayers. You keep the rhythm steady, tugging and releasing, letting the bell's own momentum carry the swing. Your arms tremble with effort. Rope burns score your palms. The vibrations ripple through your spine, a private earthquake you've signed up to experience every day. Historians still argue whether medieval bells were rung for practical timekeeping or primarily spiritual symbolism. In truth, it was both. The clang told people when to wake, when to work, when to pray, but it also reminded them that God was watching, always listening. A city without bells felt untethered, lawless. A city with them knew its place in the cosmic schedule. You, the bell ringer, are essentially a divine alarm clock. No snooze button provided. Here's your quirky tidbit of the section. Some medieval folks believed that the sound of church bells could drive away storms and even scatter demons. Entire villages counted on you to keep thunder at bay with your clanging bronze shield. Imagine standing here, sweat dripping, thinking, well, hope this racket chases off Beelzebub. No pressure. The ropes snap and creak. Your shoulders burn. You grit your teeth and keep hauling, because stopping too soon means the bell falters, the tone weakens, and the whole performance turns pathetic. The city listens for consistency. They know if you slack off. And priests notice everything. Miss a beat, and you'll be dragged down to explain yourself, probably accused of laziness, maybe even of offending the saints. The final peal booms out, echoing far across rooftops and fields. For a heartbeat after, silence clings, like the world is catching its breath. Your arms dangle, muscles trembling like jelly. You lean against a beam, sweat cooling on your back. The ropes sway gently, mocking you with their stillness. And then, almost on cue, the city stirs. Doors creak open. Hooves clop on cobblestones. Voices rise, some muttering about the noise, others calling greetings. The bells have done their job, the world is awake. You slump to the floorboards, chest heaving, ears ringing. Your reward? A few stolen minutes of rest before someone decides the bells must sound again for some obscure reason. Welcome to your workday. You shuffle back down from the belfry, legs rubbery from the climb and the heaving. Every step downward creaks under your boots, and by the time you push open the tower door, the cathedral's nave yawns before you, dim, quiet, and far too large for your mood. Your stomach rumbles louder than the bells. Time for a pause. The little side chamber near the cloister is where you take your breakfast. Calling it a meal is generous. You perch on a worn bench, unwrap a rag that holds yesterday's bread, now hard as stone, and tear at it with your teeth. The loaf squeaks as much as it crunches. Still, it fills the gap. To wash it down, you pour a bit of small ale from a clay jug, the liquid thin and sour but safer than the water. A couple of vergers drift in, yawning wide enough to swallow flies. They nod at you, mutter about the weather, then collapse onto stools. One complains about having to polish candlesticks, another brags about spotting a rat the size of a cat in the crypt. You chuckle, crumbs falling from your mouth, because in this line of work, vermin stories become the medieval version of office gossip. Your arms still throb from tugging the ropes. You flex your hands, inspecting the reddened grooves across your palms. Rope burns, always rope burns. You wonder if other jobs would be kinder, maybe the guild of coopers or bakers. But then you remember, bakers wake even earlier than you, coopers reek of tar, and everyone else earns barely more than hunger. So here you are, sore, underpaid, but at least perched in the cathedral, which gives you a whiff of importance. Historians still argue whether bell ringers were considered lowly servants or semi-sacred figures. Some records show them lumped in with cleaners and gravediggers, others hint they were respected as guardians of time. You sit there, gnawing on crust, unsure if the people who hear your bells curse you or secretly admire you. Probably both. For levity, here's a quirky tidbit. In certain towns, bell ringers were partly paid in leftover candles. Yes, the wax scraps from church services. Imagine trudging home after a long day, pockets stuffed with lumpy candle stubs. Romantic, until you remember your family expected you to melt them down just to get a little light. Medieval perks weren't exactly glamorous. Your verger companion offers you a sliver of cheese, hard, salty, with more holes than substance. You accept it gratefully, though the smell could stun a donkey. Between mouthfuls, someone tells a bawdy story about a monk falling asleep in the confessional. You snort ale through your nose, which earns you a round of laughter and a scolding to keep quiet before the prior catches wind. Through the open cloister door, you hear the city properly awake now. The market bells clang faintly in the distance, carts rumble across cobbles, and a fishwife shouts with lungs that rival your bronze monsters. It's a reminder that your breakfast pause is temporary. The bells will need you soon enough. Priests love to find reasons for extra ringing, whether for a visiting dignitary, a spontaneous mass, or just because someone important feels pious that morning. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve, tuck the bread rag into your belt for later, and rise from the bench. Muscles creak, knees grumble, but your day is only beginning. The bells have no sympathy, and neither do the priests. You sling the jug under your arm, nod at the vergers still gossiping, and step back into the cathedral. The light through stained glass now flickers with color: red, blue, green, painting the floor with jeweled shapes. Beautiful, yes, but it also means the sun is climbing, and your next duty won't wait. Your break is over. The ropes are calling again. Back out into the world, you find yourself drifting toward one of your favorite guilty pleasures, spying on the city. From the upper cloister windows you can peek beyond the cathedral walls, down into the waking market square. You lean your elbows on the sill, ignoring the ache in your shoulders, and let your eyes wander. The square is chaos wrapped in cobblestones. Stalls creak as vendors tug awnings into place, canvas snapping in the breeze. A fishmonger tips a bucket, sending scales glittering like silver in the sunlight, while a row of butchers sharpen knives with shrieks of steel on stone. Chickens squawk indignantly from wicker baskets. And pigs, oh, the pigs snuffle through mud puddles as if they own the place, scattering children who squeal and chase after them. The bells you rang not long ago are the reason all this racket began. Without you, the square would still be snoring under blankets. You grin at the thought, your arms may ache, but you've set the stage for commerce. The city moves to your rhythm, even if nobody stops to thank you. Your stomach twists again at the smell drifting on the wind, roasting chestnuts, fresh bread, and the sharp tang of onions. The baker's stall always tempts you, though your purse can barely manage a stale heel once a week. Historians still argue whether market vendors raised prices on bell ringers out of annoyance at the early racket, or whether you simply couldn't earn enough to keep pace with inflation. Either way, breakfast feels like a cruel joke compared to the feast wafting up to your perch. Down below, a crier unfurls a scroll and begins shouting proclamations in a voice that could rival your bells. You can just catch the words, some new tax, a merchant caravan arriving, and of course another warning against thieves. The irony isn't lost on you. Half the boys listening are already planning how to lighten purses before noon. For a moment, you allow yourself to drift into the lives of these people. The girl balancing jugs of milk on her shoulders. The friar pawning a half-broken rosary. The soldier leaning on a spear, yawning so hard you fear he'll swallow his helmet strap. Every clang of your bells earlier nudged them into motion, and now they swirl together in this noisy tapestry. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some medieval cities actually find vendors who ignored the bell's signal to open or close shop. Imagine the absurdity. Your job isn't just waking people, it's also policing punctuality. You're basically a medieval human alarm clock with built-in civic authority. Not bad for someone who hasn't had a proper meal in days. A cart rattles over stones, piled high with cabbages, one rolling off and exploding into leaves as a dog claims victory. Children cheer like it's a festival. A tinker calls out his wares, pots, pans, and ladles that gleam in the morning light. The square is alive, messy, wonderful, and you, high above, feel both part of it and apart from it. But your leisure can't last. You hear footsteps echoing inside the cathedral, one of the younger clerks, red-faced and waving frantically. You already know what that means. Someone important wants bells rung, probably sooner than you'd like. You sigh, rubbing your palms against your tunic to ready them for rope again. The market may be noisy, but your bells are louder, and today the city will hear them plenty. With one last longing look at the fishmongers and chestnut sellers, you push away from the window. Your secret people-watching session is over. Duty calls, and it's heavy, bronze, and very, very loud. The clerk waves his arms like he's summoning a ghost, robes flapping around spindly legs. You know the look, panic mixed with urgency, which can only mean one thing: the priests want you in the tower. Again. Already. You mutter under your breath, half a prayer, half a curse, and follow him back through the nave. His voice comes out in squeaks, explaining that Father Prior insists the bells must toll immediately to honor some obscure saint whose feast day you've never even heard of. You resist the urge to ask why saints always seem to wake up at the most inconvenient times. The ropes sway expectantly as you climb back into the tower. Your arms ache from the morning tolls, but priests don't care about your muscles. They care about spectacle. The louder the bells, the more pious the impression. You grasp the rope, dig in your heels, and pull again. The bell answers with a thunderous clang, echoing like judgment itself. The clerk claps his hands in delight, as though he helped, before scurrying back down to report to his masters. You snort and mutter, glad to provide your thunder, Father. The rope thrums in your palms, demanding more. You give it, because the alternative is a lecture about sloth and disobedience, and no one wants that. Historians still argue whether bell ringers had the right to refuse sudden tolls. Records suggest some dared, and quickly found themselves replaced, or worse, accused of negligence against God's house. You, being fond of both food and not being excommunicated, keep hauling. Your shoulders grind like rusty hinges. Each swing of the bell shudders through the wooden beams, dust raining down into your hair. You cough, blinking against grit. Somewhere below, worshippers spill into pews, startled by the sudden peal. That's the thing about cathedral bells, they aren't background music, they're front and center commands. When they roar, you drop whatever you're doing and pay attention. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some towns, bells were rung to announce not just religious services but also things like a whale washing ashore or a tavern fire. Imagine yanking on the ropes only to find half the city shows up expecting free meat or to gawk at flames. You're basically the medieval equivalent of breaking news alerts. By the time you finish this urgent toll, sweat drips from your hairline, streaking dust down your cheeks. You collapse against a beam, chest heaving. Your ears ring with ghostly aftersounds, as though the bells keep clanging inside your skull. And just when you think you might get a moment's peace, another clerk scampers up with yet another request. This time, a local noble has arrived, and the bells must greet him with honor. You throw your head back and laugh, a little wildly. Of course he needs bells. Why would a noble walk through the gate without half the town knowing he's graced them? Still, you grab the rope again. Bronze answers bronze, and the whole cathedral shudders in applause for a man who probably won't even glance at the poor fool making it happen. When the final echoes fade, you slump against the wall, arms numb, heart hammering. The priests will return to their chants, the noble to his entourage, and the townsfolk to their gossip. And you'll stay here, the invisible hand pulling the levers of sound, waiting for the next cryptic command. By midday, the weather turns on you. What began as a soft golden morning now roils into clouds, their grey bellies sagging heavy with rain. You trudge back up the tower stairs because, of course, a storm doesn't mean the bells get a holiday. If anything, priests insist even more urgently that the bells must toll, prayers for safety, for deliverance, for God's mercy on wet sheep and worried merchants. The wind howls through the slatted windows of the belfry, tugging your hair like a mischievous spirit. Ropes whip unpredictably in the draught, and your palms slip on the damp hemp. You mutter something not found in scripture and rub your hands on your tunic, but the sweat and rain make everything slick. One false move and you'll be airborne, a human kite dangling from your own bell. Above you, the bells swing with extra menace. Each gust pushes them off rhythm, so you struggle twice as hard to keep control. The clapper slams bronze with a violence that rattles your teeth. The entire tower shudders like it's alive, moaning with every strike. You try not to imagine the masonry giving way, whole tons of stone tumbling onto the city like Judgment Day. Historians still argue whether storms ever truly cracked cathedral towers, but enough accounts exist of lightning strikes and collapsed spires to keep you glancing nervously at the ceiling. And speaking of lightning, the flash comes first, a searing streak across the sky, followed by a crack so loud it makes your bones ache. For one dizzying moment, you wonder if the bell itself has exploded. You taste metal on your tongue, the shockwave buzzing through your chest. You're not exaggerating when you think, this job might literally kill me. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some medieval towns believed ringing the bells during storms actually chased away thunder. The idea was that the holy sound cut through the sky and frightened demons back into hiding. Which means here you are, yanking with raw knuckles, expected to duel thunder with bronze. You can't help chuckling between heaves. Great. I'm the city's storm scarecrow. The rain slashes sideways through the louvers, soaking your tunic, dripping down your nose. The floor becomes slick, your boots squeaking dangerously with each shift. You tie a rope around your waist, better to look like a trussed goose than to slip and plummet onto the nave below. Despite everything, the city listens. You can just glimpse townsfolk below hurrying under cloaks, glancing up toward the tower as the bells roar defiantly. Children squeal at each thunderclap, clutching their mother's skirts, but you give them another strike of Gabriel or John, as if to say, we're louder than the sky. You're safe. When the storm finally eases, you sag against a beam, soaked and trembling. The bells settle back into silence, swinging lazily like tired beasts. Water drips from your chin, your sleeves, even your boots. You peel the rope from around your waist and shake your arms, muscles burning. For a moment, there's only quiet, broken by a lone pigeon cooing smugly from its dry perch. You glare at it, whispering, next time, you pull the rope. When the storm passes, the tower feels oddly alive, like the weather has left behind a residue of energy. You wipe rain from your eyes, stretch your stiff shoulders, and glance at the beams above. That's when you notice movement. Not holy angels. Not thunder demons. Just trouble of the everyday variety. 2 apprentices are up here, boys barely into their teens, snickering as they carve initials into a wooden post. One scratches so hard the knife squeals. The other spits on the floorboards just to see the gobbet fall. You groan inwardly. Apprentices are supposed to help, to learn the ropes, literally. Instead, they're scribbling graffiti, leaving their mark as if future historians will care. Or, you mutter, voice rough, the bells won't ring themselves. The boys grin, unrepentant, one even gesturing with a mock bow. You roll your eyes. They'll learn soon enough when their first real toll rips their shoulders from their sockets. Of course, it's not just boys who haunt the belfry. Pigeons flap overhead, their wings shedding grey feathers that drift onto your damp hair. They coo from the rafters like old women gossiping. You wave an arm, but they barely budge. Truth be told, they own this place more than you do. Some bell ringers even tried to catch them for dinner, a free pigeon pie if you had patience and a sturdy net. Your eyes narrow as you notice something worse. One of the smaller bells hangs strangely still, a rope slack where it should be taut. You tug experimentally, nothing. The clapper has jammed. You swear under your breath, because fixing it means crawling into the beams where dust, guano, and spider webs reign supreme. Historians still argue whether bells spoke to people, whether townsfolk interpreted strange silences as omens of disaster. A jammed bell wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a bad sign. Superstition being what it was, you know someone will soon mutter that the devil himself has tied a knot in your rope. You'd laugh, if you weren't the poor fool who now has to wriggle through rafters to set it right. You drag yourself up, wedging between beams, dust puffing into your nose. One sneeze nearly topples you off balance. The jam reveals itself at last, a lump of wood wedged in the mechanism, probably from storm debris or maybe from one of those prankster apprentices. You glare down at them. They suddenly look very innocent, whistling at the sky. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some records say bell towers doubled as lovers' meeting spots, tucked away from prying eyes. You try not to imagine anyone romancing up here amid the pigeon droppings and thunderous vibrations. Still, judging by the carvings you've found, hearts, initials, even crude drawings, you suspect those records might be true. At last, with one solid shove, the obstruction gives. The bell creaks, rope tautening again, ready to roar. You climb down, wiping muck from your tunic. The apprentices gape, impressed despite themselves. See, you rasp, that's how you keep the city running. For a fleeting moment, you allow yourself a small smile. Troublesome boys, stubborn pigeons, jammed bells, this is your battlefield, strange and smelly though it is. And as ridiculous as it sometimes feels, you are the general keeping order in this sky-high chaos. Your brief triumph over the jammed bell doesn't last long. Word spreads quickly, as it always does, and before you've even caught your breath, a messenger from the sacristy comes panting up the stairwell. Festival day. All bells, all day. He says it like he's announcing free beer, but you know better. Festival day for you means blister day. By the time you return to the belfry, the square below is already in uproarious motion. Bright banners snap in the breeze, stalls overflow with spiced wine, roasted meats, and sugared almonds. Children weave between dancers, their hands sticky with honey cakes. A troupe of jugglers sends knives flashing in the sunlight, while drummers pound out a rhythm that feels like a challenge to your bells. And you are the opening act, the percussion section, and the finale all in one. The priests insist that festivals require thunderous, ceaseless ringing bells layered over bells until the whole city vibrates. You seize the ropes, plant your boots, and heave. The belfry explodes with sound. One bell roars, then another joins, then the great tenor, its voice so deep it makes your ribs buzz. The air itself shudders, pigeons burst from the rafters in a storm of wings, and the city erupts in cheers. You haul and release, every muscle in your arms screaming. Sweat drips down your back, soaking your tunic. Blisters swell under the rope's merciless bite. Still, you can't falter, the rhythm must stay steady, for the sound is more than music, it's a kind of prayer shouted to the heavens. Historians still argue whether such non-stop ringing was meant to honor saints or simply to drown out the competing noise of fairs and markets. Either way, your body doesn't care about theology. It just hurts. Below, the festival whirls on. You glimpse acrobats tumbling, merchants shouting, a drunkard already asleep in the hay, mouth open to the sky. The smell of roasting boar drifts upward, taunting you cruelly. You laugh bitterly under your breath, everybody else gets pork, you get rope burns. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some cities, enthusiastic bell ringers accidentally cracked their bells on festival days by ringing too furiously. Imagine explaining that to the bishop, "Sorry, Father, the bell just couldn't keep up with me." You make a mental note not to let your own zeal shatter several tons of bronze. The afternoon blurs into a haze of sound and pain. Your arms tremble, your back bows, your palms blister and bleed. The apprentices are forced to help, though they manage only a few ragged pulls before collapsing, panting like dogs. You bark a laugh and keep going, fueled by stubborn pride. The city roars with you, dancing, drinking, shouting, the bells binding it all together like the heartbeat of a giant beast. Finally, as dusk creeps in, the priests signal that the festival toll is done. You stagger back from the ropes, chest heaving, ears ringing with phantom clangs. The belfry sways gently in the evening breeze, pigeons returning as though nothing happened. Your palms sting, your muscles twitch, but below you the city is still ablaze with joy. And though you'll never join their feasting, a strange satisfaction lingers. For one day, you've shaken heaven and earth with your own two hands. The festival fades into the distance, but your arms don't forget. By noon the next day, they feel like they've been replaced with sacks of wet sand. Each movement is stiff, reluctant, like the muscles are staging a quiet rebellion. And yet the bells don't care. The schedule is carved into stone and scripture. Midday chimes must roll out across the city whether your shoulders like it or not. You stand before the ropes, staring at them as though they're executioners. The air in the belfry is warmer now, thick with the smell of sun-baked wood and old dust. A fly buzzes lazily, as if mocking your fatigue. You wrap your hands around the coarse hemp again, feeling the fresh blisters bloom under the calices. The first pull nearly topples you. Your knees buckle, your spine groans, but the bell stirs. The rope surges upward, dragging at your weight like it wants to haul you straight into the rafters. You grit your teeth, dig in your heels, and yank again. The bell finds its rhythm, each swing booming into the noon air. The sound is different at midday, less solemn than morning, less grand than vespers. It's a practical reminder. Merchants pause, farmers in nearby fields check the sun, children are dragged home for bread and broth. Historians still argue whether every town truly obeyed the bells, but from up here you can see the ripple of movement each time your bronze beasts roar. Your body, however, is falling apart. Sweat stings your eyes, and your hands tremble so badly you nearly lose grip. The rhythm is everything, too fast and the bell tangles the rope, too slow and the clapper falters. You whisper nonsense to yourself just to keep focus, half chant, half prayer. Pull and breathe, don't collapse, don't die. Quirky tidbit for you. Some medieval accounts describe bell ringers fainting mid-duty, dragged upward by ropes until they dangled like rag dolls. Rescue usually involved knives cutting the cords, which sometimes meant the bells themselves clanged wildly in protest. You eye the ropes nervously and think, please, not me. Not today. Down below, the marketplace continues its noisy play. You glimpse a boy flying a rag kite, its tail whipping in the sunlight. A pair of monks argue over fish prices, their tonsures glinting like polished coins. The world is ordinary, humming along, completely unaware that you're up here sweating blood to keep it on time. When the final stroke fades, you collapse to the floorboards, gasping. Your arms twitch involuntarily, muscles spasming like plucked lute strings. You lie flat on your back, staring at the ceiling beams, half convinced you'll never get up again. And yet you know you will. Because the bells will need you soon enough, and the city won't wait. For now, though, you let the silence wash over you. No ropes tugging, no bronze booming, just the faint rustle of pigeons reclaiming their perches. Noon exhaustion settles into your bones, heavy as lead, and you realize you've still got half a day left to survive. The quiet of noon doesn't last. A murmur rises from the streets below, first faint, then sharper, until it swells into a tide of shouts. You drag yourself upright and lean out the belfry window. What you see wipes away every thought of rest. A procession winds its way through the city, candles flickering in the daylight, banners snapping, incense smoke curling. At its center, carried high on shoulders, is a coffin draped in embroidered cloth. A funeral, solemn and slow, the mourners dressed in black. And of course, the dead demand bells. Not just any toll, but the passing bell, that long, mournful sound meant to guide a soul safely out of this world. Your arms ache just looking at the ropes. Yet duty doesn't bend for blisters. You steady yourself, plant your feet, and pull. The great bell answers, not in quick bursts but in drawn-out sobs. Each boom lingers, rolling over rooftops, sinking into the marrow of the crowd below. People bow their heads, crossing themselves. Children quiet. Dogs even pause their barking, as if sensing something larger than themselves. Historians still argue whether the passing bell was believed to scare away demons lurking for souls, or simply to remind the living to pray. Either way, the sound has weight, pressing on the city like a velvet shroud. You feel it in your ribs, low and heavy, as if the bell tolls inside you. You keep the rhythm slow, deliberate, spacing each strike with aching precision. Between pulls, your arms tremble, and you lean your forehead against the rope to steady yourself. Somewhere below, the coffin pauses at the cathedral steps. Priests chant in Latin, their words snatched by the wind. You almost imagine the bell answering them, voice to voice, earth to heaven. Quirky tidbit here, some medieval towns rang the bell before death if someone was gravely ill, as though the sound could ease their passing. It became so common that officials occasionally had to forbid premature tolling. Apparently not everyone appreciated their death being announced ahead of schedule. You chuckle darkly. You'd hate to hear your own bell rumbling before you've had your last bowl of stew. As the coffin disappears into the cathedral, you let the final toll fade into silence. The rope swings gently, humming like a lute string after a pluck. Sweat trickles down your back, though your skin feels cold. The air in the belfry is heavy, thick with the echo of grief. You lean on the beam, catching your breath. Outside, the city slowly stirs again, murmurs rising, feet shuffling, merchants calling. Life resumes, as it always does. But for a moment, you linger in that hush, the ghost of the bell still inside you, wondering if you've just rung for a soul you knew. The hush after the funeral doesn't last. The city below has a short memory, and evening creeps in with its usual restlessness. Stalls are closing, bakers are pulling the last loaves from their ovens, and the taverns are already spilling laughter and clattering mugs into the streets. And up in your belfry, it's time for vespers. You drag yourself to the ropes once more. Your arms still throb from the funeral toll, but you know the evening ringing is different, less mournful, more orderly. The monks call it the Bell of Light because it marks the hour when candles and oil lamps are lit across the city. You can see it already, smoke rising from chimneys, glow from shutters, 1,000 tiny flames answering the fading sun. You brace and pull. The bells answer in layered voices, bright, steady, neither hurried nor solemn. The sound drifts out like a woven cloak, wrapping the city in routine. Families know it's time to gather, apprentices know to put down their tools, lovers know to sneak away from the fields before they're caught. Historians still argue whether medieval citizens actually lived by the bells as strictly as chroniclers claimed, but from up here you can watch the shift happen almost instantly. Your hands ache with each tug, but there's a rhythm now, easier than the chaotic festival or the funeral's slow dirge. Almost meditative. You start to notice details, the creak of the beams, the rustle of pigeons in the rafters, the way your own breath falls in time with the bronze voices. It's a strange, hypnotic trance, broken only by the occasional cough from an apprentice pretending he's helping more than he is. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some places, evening bells were called curfew bells, literally cover fire, a reminder to smother home hearths before bed to prevent accidental blazes. Imagine every night being ordered to snuff your flames by the cathedral's shout. Of course, plenty ignored it. Humans have always had a rebellious streak when it comes to bedtime. As you work, you glance out the narrow window. The sky is bruised purple, streaked with gold. In the square below, children chase each other with sticks, their laughter rising between peals. A woman balances a basket of apples on her head, striding home with perfect grace. Somewhere, a minstrel tunes a lute, his faint notes mingling with your bell song in a duet no one planned. The last strokes echo out into the cooling air. You let the rope slip through your blistered palms and sag against the beam, exhausted but oddly content. Evening is softer than day, the city seems to sigh into itself, and for once you're ringing not for death, or for panic, but simply to mark the passage of time. You rest your head against the rough wood, eyes half closed. The bells have spoken, the city has listened, and for a fleeting moment, you almost feel like the rhythm of the world is yours to conduct. The golden hour fades, and the tower glows in the last light of day. You're still up there, body aching like an old cartwheel, but the job isn't over. The evening chimes are one thing, but now comes the sunset toll, vespers closing into night, a signal of winding down, of order before darkness takes over. The ropes hang heavy, whispering against the wooden floorboards. You wrap them in your sore palms, wincing at the sting of blisters, and take a deep breath. The bells don't forgive fatigue. They demand steady pulls, no matter how much your shoulders scream. You lean back, let your body weight do the work, and the first deep boom rolls out across rooftops painted orange by the sinking sun. The sound is different now, warmer, richer, like honey poured from bronze. It settles into the stones of the cathedral, flows down the narrow alleys, and drifts over the river where fishermen haul in their final catch. You can see it all from up here, smoke rising from cook fires, shutters closing one by one, dogs herding stragglers home. The city exhales as the bells keep time. Historians still argue whether the exact number of evening chimes was fixed by strict ritual or left to the bell ringer's discretion. You, standing in sweat and exhaustion, know the truth. Sometimes you just do what you can get away with. If you shave off one toll to save your blistered hand, who's really counting? Well, aside from the bishop. And the bishop always counts. You grin despite yourself. A quirky tidbit for you. In certain towns, evening bells doubled as a signal for taverns to open their doors. Imagine it, your weary tolls are the city's happy hour announcement. Down below, maybe that's why the crowd already grows louder, mugs clinking, laughter spilling out. You ring them toward their ale, while you're stuck choking on tower dust. The sky deepens from gold to crimson to a velvet indigo. Your sweat catches the last shards of sunlight as you yank the ropes, each toll rocking your entire body. The bell's vibrations climb through your bones, until your chest feels like another clapper. You're swaying with the rhythm now, half dancing, half staggering, just to stay in time. When the final note fades, the silence is thick, like a blanket pulled over the city. The ropes fall slack in your hands, and you let them drop. Your arms hang limp, useless for a moment. You stumble to the narrow window, bracing yourself against the cool stone, and gaze out. The streets are shadowed, but lanterns bloom one by one, tiny stars below to mirror the ones above. The air is cooler, sweet with the smell of bread still baking, sharper with the tang of river water. You breathe it in and let your heart beat slow. The bells have spoken again, and you've survived another round. Evening has settled, the world has listened, and the cathedral stands like a sentinel, its bronze voices already resting for the next call. Darkness folds over the city like a heavy cloak. The last streaks of sunset are gone, leaving only the pale shimmer of the moon, and your body feels like it's been wrung out like a sodden rag. Yet the day isn't done, not for you. Because when the sun goes down, the curfew bell waits. You slump back toward the ropes, grumbling under your breath. This toll is different from the rest. It's not about worship, not about mourning, not even about celebration. No, the curfew bell is about control. With each boom, the city is told, time to douse your fires, lock your doors, and stop loitering in the streets. It's bedtime, by order of the cathedral. Medieval crowd control, one clang at a time. You pull, and the first strike cuts through the night like a warning shot. Dogs bark in reply. Children groan as mothers herd them indoors. Somewhere down in the square, a drunk yells something rude at the bell. You can't quite catch it, but it sounds like a wager that he won't be going home. You smirk. There's always one. Historians still argue whether curfew was strictly enforced or more of a polite suggestion. Some records hint at guards patrolling after dark, clamping down on rule breakers. Others suggest plenty of folks simply ignored the bells, especially tavern-goers who preferred their ale warm and their nights long. You suspect the truth is somewhere in between, like your own effort tonight, enthusiastic at first, then a little sloppy toward the end. Here's a quirky tidbit. In some places, teenagers dared each other to sneak out after the curfew bells, treating it like a game of hide-and-seek with the night watch. Picture a medieval version of tag but with more stakes and probably more manure piles to trip into. You grin, imagining your younger self trying it, and then wince, because if you'd been caught, you'd have gotten a lecture from a bishop that would have rung louder than any bell. The rope bites your hands, but the rhythm steadies. Boom. Pause. Boom. The sound stretches over rooftops, echoing off stone walls, bouncing down alleys. The city stills under your command. From your perch, you feel oddly like a shepherd corralling sheep with nothing but bronze voices. When the final toll dies, silence takes the city. The streets below are emptying fast now, shutters closed, lanterns dimmed. Only the occasional flicker of torchlight moves along, likely a guard or a stubborn merchant counting his coins. The cathedral looms even larger in the dark, its silhouette carved against the stars, its bells now quiet but still threatening, like a sleeping giant. You sag against the beam, chest heaving, the ropes hanging limp. The tower is cooler now, night wind slipping through cracks, smelling of damp stone and wood smoke. The pigeons above you shuffle in their nests, cooing softly. The city is sliding into sleep, and you, ironically, must stay awake just a bit longer. Because while others dream, you stand watch with bronze sentinels, the keeper of silence after sound. The curfew has been rung, the streets below are hushed, and at last, you're free to let your weary body sag into the cool stone wall of the belfry. The ropes sway gently, their work done, while the bells themselves loom above, silent and massive, glinting faintly in the moonlight. It feels strange to see them resting, like soldiers finally off duty, waiting for dawn to summon them again. You lower yourself onto the rough planks, pulling your knees close. Every joint aches, every muscle burns, and your palms are red and raw from a day of endless pulls. Yet in this exhausted stillness, you realize something. You've survived. You've lived through a day in the life of a bell ringer, and while you probably wouldn't sign up for it again, you're strangely proud. From the window slit, you watch the city below, finally asleep. Only a few wandering torches move through the darkness, shadows stretching long over cobblestones. Somewhere, a dog barks, answered by another across the river. The cathedral stands watchful, its tower like a finger pointing at the stars. Historians still argue whether bell ringers were respected guardians of the city's time or just poor souls stuck with grunt work. From your perspective, perched here in aching silence, you know it's both. You've been the heartbeat of the day, the keeper of order, the one voice no one could ignore. And yet, your pay is pitiful, your hands are blistered, and your supper is probably cold by now. Life is rarely simple, even when told in bronze. One last quirky tidbit before you drift off. Some bell ringers were known to sleep in the belfry itself, curling up under ropes or even on wooden beams, lulled by the pigeons and the faint creak of the tower. Maybe you'll do the same tonight. After all, climbing down those endless stairs on jello legs might be the most dangerous task of the day. The bells wait above you, quiet but ready, like faithful beasts resting in the stable. Tomorrow, they'll roar again at dawn. And tomorrow, you'll be here, rope in hand, because time never stops needing its keeper. Now, let the ropes fall loose in your imagination. Picture the bells high above, their bronze mouths closed, the tower swaying gently in the night breeze. You've done enough work for one day. Your arms no longer need to pull, your feet no longer need to climb. All you need is stillness. Breathe in the cool night air of the medieval city. Hear the faint trickle of the river, the quiet shuffle of a guard's boots on stone, the last whisper of shutters being latched. Even the pigeons in the rafters have tucked their heads under their wings. The world is dim, hushed, and safe. Let the cathedral fade into the background, its bells no longer booming, just waiting, like a watchful friend who promises to keep time while you rest. Let the ache of the day dissolve into warmth, as though the very wood and stone of the tower cradle you. Imagine lying down on the planks, staring at the stars through a slit window, their light soft and steady. The city below is asleep, the bells above are still, and you, too, can finally let go. With each breath, let the sound of the bells fade further into memory, loud bronze peals becoming softer, smaller, until they are nothing more than echoes, then whispers, then silence. You are safe, you are tired, and you are allowed to rest. So close your eyes, let the night wrap around you, and drift gently into sleep. The bells will still be here when you wake, but for now, the only toll that matters is the rhythm of your breathing, steady and calm.